Thank you for the introduction. Unfortunately, we have only 10 minutes to coffee break, but speaking English quickly is difficult for me, but I will try to save your coffee break as much as possible.
So, again, good point, right? And I hate to interrupt, but when we have really, really good questions, we have to do this because you guys paid a lot of money to be here. So the questions are important. You have your full allotment. We'll push coffee out a little bit later.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Masafumi Kondo from Japan Exchange Group. The Japan Exchange Group is a holdings company of Tokyo Stock Exchange and the Japan Securities Clearing Corporation. And also JPX is the biggest shareholder of Japanese CSD called JASDEC. So thank you so much for this opportunity to introduce you to our initiative on DLT. So at first, I'd like to briefly explain the outline. We started internal research and study on DLT from 2015, but we soon realized that it's very difficult to understand this technology only from publicly available information. So we soon started proof of concepts by testing it to understand this technology. And in 2016, we conducted 2 POCs in parallel. The one was testing Hyperledger Fabric version 0.6 with IBM, and the other is testing a private version of Ethereum. This is some kind of fork of Ethereum. And also last year, we tested Hyperledger Fabric version 1.0 also with IBM. And through this research and the POC, we have periodically published our understanding and lessons learned from our POC as publicly available working papers, both in Japanese and English. So these working papers are available on our website. And also, we've been closely working with Japanese financial industry. We have accepted participation from our membership banks and brokers to our journey to explore DLT. And currently, 36 financial institutions have participated into our project. And also, we have closely communicating with Japanese FSA and Bank of Japan. So now we've been considering which area or which business process should be pertinent for the first production use in our Japanese securities industry. So what we have tested on early proof of concept testing in 2016 and 2017, we tried to build a small capital market infrastructure on DLT and assessed the feasibility or applicability of each layer of capital market functionalities. And the diagram shows the overview of what we have built on DLT. So for listed companies, they can issue securities and also execute corporate actions, and also they refer their shareholder information on DLT. And financial institutions can register their trading information on the DLT network. And also the DVP settlement between securities and cash are virtually executed on DLT. And we also tried to realize data privacy control by data encryption with Fabric version 0.6 and by the function called channel in Fabric version 1.0. So of course, these functions are much simpler than real use case, real business workflow. So what we intended was identifying the advantage and the limitation of the DLT by replicating the existing our infrastructure as much as possible on DLT. And actually, the demo video of our application is available on YouTube. And the video showed the outline of each functionalities of the application based on Fabric version 1.0. So if you are interested in it, please search JPX and DLT on YouTube. So the first working paper published in July 2016 mainly described the lessons learned from our first POC, what was realized and what was difficult. And also we tried to assess the feasibility of applying DLT for the real production environment of the post-trade processes, especially DVP settlement of securities and cash. And in many countries, that securities have been already fully digitized and recorded on CSD's database. So the biggest hurdle to realize DVP settlement is how can we realize cash payment finality on DLT? And we proposed 3 possible approaches shown in the slide. The plan A is linkage between existing settlement infrastructure outside of DLT. And the second one is utilizing digital tokens backed by fiat currencies like MUFG coin. And the third one is utilizing the digital fiat currency recording directly to DLT by central bank. And I think all of them has been explored parallelly in global. So for example, the effort to improve or enhance the interoperability between DLT and outside of the system, like Interledger protocol led by Ripple, is quite similar to Plan A. And also some DLT project, like MFG coin or utility settlement coin led by UBS, is close to money token idea, Plan B. And as for the digital fiat currency idea, some central banks in the world have been aggressively exploring the potential or opportunity of utilizing DLT for their business. And next, the second working paper published last year described the latest trends in technical development and some new issues for utilizing DLT in capital market. And in this paper, we compared 3 major DLT platforms, Fabric version 1.0, and Corda, and Quorum. And on the whole, those 3 platforms has advantages on data confidentiality and the throughput performance and scalability compared with conventional blockchain or DLT. And those aspects come from their common features of physically segregated data store structure. So today, most of you might already be familiar with these platforms, but let me briefly go through the outline of each platform, and maybe in more details or the latest topics of each platform will be provided by the speaker from IBM or R3 or JP Morgan through this event today and tomorrow. So first one is Hyperledger Fabric version 1, which was the version 1 was officially released in July last year. And the Fabric version 1 has drastically changed from the previous version 0.6. While Fabric version 0.6 employs the predefined consensus algorithm based on PBFT, but the Fabric version 1.0 unbundled the process of executing transaction and validating transaction. And by doing this, they need some specific functionality or specific role in DLT networks called endorser and orderer. And also there is a configuration called endorsement policy to decide which node is endorser for each smart contract and how many signature of endorser is needed for transaction to be validated. So given that, Fabric version 1.0 realized the flexibility of processing transaction and validating transaction. And also it realized the data confidentiality by using the function called channel. And also recently, another new data privacy control function called private ledger has just been implemented to the latest version 1.2. And next one is Corda. The Corda is also upgraded to version 1 last year, and currently already the latest version is version 3, so the development is quite fast. But the technical feature of Corda has been consistent compared with Hyperledger Fabric. And I think one of the most distinctive aspects of Corda is it employs UTXO as its data model. It's very similar to blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain. And it also needs a specific role called notary service to prevent double spend. The notary service manages the history of previously spent transactions. And another distinctive feature of Corda is it doesn't have any global ledger or chain in network, so which means Corda doesn't share any specific data in all nodes in the network. So every transaction, every communication is done bilaterally. And third one is Corda, which is the fork of Ethereum for focusing on the enterprise use and developed by JP Morgan. And it was also open sourced in 2016. And actually, Quorum is less famous than 2 other platforms, But I think we have to pay attention to it because the Quorum is the reference implementation of Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And also some basic component of Quorum is common with public Ethereum, which means Quorum can automatically benefit from further enhancement of the world's second biggest public blockchain network. And I think the most distinctive feature of Quorum is it realizing data privacy control without placing any specific node in the network. So which means it secures the decentralization with no single point of failure, even though it realizes data privacy control. Quorum provides two types of transaction. The one is public transaction, the other is private transaction. And the procedure of processing public transaction is almost same as public Ethereum transaction. But if you use private transaction, the actual data will be only stored among the node owned by the entity which are related to the transaction. And only the hash value or digested value will be stored in all nodes. So as we have seen so far, DLT platforms mainly developed for financial industry has been evolving very far from the original concept of blockchain or DLT for satisfying the requirements of financial industry. I think many people think that the original concept of Bitcoin or blockchain is the decentralization with no single point of failure or the Byzantine fault tolerance. But these three platforms no longer support either or both of the aspects. The Quorum is relatively closer to the original concept, but it's less tested than other two platforms at the moment. And I think personally, the throughput performance might be the weak point of the Quorum because frequent data encryption needs large amount of computational power. So anyway, so completely trustless infrastructure is no longer realistic, and collaboration between banks, brokers, and investors are important, and developing less dominant or more efficient infrastructure by using DLT is a realistic solution in financial industry. So one of the examples of this idea is utilizing DLT as open platform between financial institutions and existing ledger keepers like central bank or custodian banks or CSDs. In this model, multiple ledger keepers connect to the same DLT network and open up their functions like settlement of currencies or financial products. And those functions will be able to call from smart contract. So given that, the participating financial institutions can flexibly design their financial transaction, financial contract, as a transaction of DLT among different ledger keepers. So for example, if Bob would like to exchange currency A and B with Charlie, and the currency A is managed by central bank A, and the currency B is managed by central bank B, and both has connected to the same network. And then Bob creates a new transaction. And if transaction requires the transfer of currency A, the transaction requires a verification of central bank A. So in this case, this transaction requires full verification from Bob, Charlie, and the central bank and bank B. And then the all transfer will be done atomically. So it's something like the open API economy, and I think I agree with it. So I think this is some kind of enhancement of open API economy by adding some technical features of DLT like auditability or the ability of synchronization of some APIs among different entities. And actually some DLT project, especially those who use Corda, is very similar to this concept. And some of them has been already escalated into pilot phase or production phase because it requires not a big change in regulatory framework. And lastly, let me introduce JPX's current initiative. we operate a test environment from beginning of 2017. There are two distinctive features. The one is we officially seek and accept participation from a wide range of financial institutions and IT vendors. And also we provide a test environment to deploy and test DLT application build it on public cloud service. And also we provide a member-only website for facilitating communication among members. And also the use case is not limited, and not only JPX, but also participating financial institutions or IT vendors can propose the use case related to capital market. And they can conduct a joint project, a joint proof of concept within this environment. And currently, 3 use cases shown in the slide were proposed and have been escalated to the stage of a joint project. And each project attracts participation from many financial institutions, and they have actively discussed the practical issues or practical requirement for production use. And also, the lessons learned through each project will be published as a working paper. And actually, the lessons learned from trade matching project has just released in March this year, and the one from KYC and AML project is coming soon. So that's the end of my presentation. And finally, I'd like to answer your question, what is blockchain and what is important? And JPX believes that DLT is not just a technology or no longer a technology. And this is a tool, or this is a catalyst of collaboration in large scale or sometimes in cross-border. And if you look at some DLT project going on, some issues to be solved is not quite new, but actually the issue has not been solved for years or decades in our industry. So what is important is the change of our mind. So after the movement of DLT or Bitcoin, we are aware that we might be possible, or we might be able to solve the problem by collaboration. So what we'd like to do is facilitate ecosystem and innovation with other financial institutions. So we are very open for you, and we are very welcome to your proposal to collaborate with us. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Big round of applause. So you bring up a really good point, as did Vinay previously, collaboration, right? And collaboration amongst what would typically be adversarials in a marketplace. What's really, what I find one of the most fascinating aspects of the technology, it allows us as competitors to actually benefit from working together without me having to share any confidential information with you. The sum becomes far greater than the parts. And we see this with the number of financial institutions on the trade matching, the KYC AML, the cross-border confirmation. The sum is far greater than the parts in these collaborative consortia environments. So thank you for bringing that up. Any questions from the audience? Okay, we got one in the back.
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. I have a very quick question. As you mentioned earlier that the blockchain has moved very far away from what you originally expected. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. And the second, you mentioned that it is actually not quite possible to actually have a trustless system in the so-called traditional financial system. So can you elaborate on these 2 points? Thank you very much.
Yes, what I'd like to say is the DLT platform developed mainly for financial institutions has been evolved far from the original concept of Bitcoin, and the original concept of blockchain. But the other platform, like the public blockchain, is still very decentralized and anarchic system, so it depends. I think that totally different to each other. And also, what I'd like to say is that developing trust needs a very, very big power and time. So, and existing financial industry have some trusted third party like us or central bank. So we can utilize this trust and combine the flexibility or the efficiency of DLT and existing trust, and then we will make much simpler or much efficient financial structure.
So we don't need trust. We trust in the technology.
Just a follow-up question. Of the three, the systems you're using, which one you favor the most? Which one's your favorite? If it's too direct, if it's not too direct.
Yeah, actually, the Corda is most closer to production environment, I think. It's most mature, and the Fabric is quite early stage, but it developing rapidly, so it depends on the further development, so I cannot say something at the moment.
So Corda is developed by R3, correct?
Sorry.
Anthony Lewis, a friend of mine, will be talking on Corda either later today or tomorrow. He's a good guy. They're doing good stuff. Any other questions? Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, biology break, coffee break. Coffee break is sponsored by Blockchain Technology Malaysia. So when you're having your cup of joe, thank the Blockchain Malaysia guys. 30 minutes, we'll be back in this room. Take advantage of the technology hall next door, go see some of the vendors, and we'll see you soon.